Hello, I am Crystal Petrie, and welcome to another episode of my podcast, 60 Minutes With. Today, we are talking all about politics, election, President Trump, Vice President Harris, and how to get you more engaged in the political system. And here to educate all of us, including myself, is Davante Jennings from the Young Democrats of Georgia. So welcome to the podcast, Davante.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'll try to spit what I can. I'm not the expert, but I appreciate that.
On this podcast, you're the expert.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are the expert. So where in the world are you, Davante?
I reside currently in Atlanta, Georgia, Peach State, Hot Atlanta, Black Hollywood.
I love all of those. I love all of those monikers.
Yes.
Okay, so my first question for you, Davante, what do you believe are the top priorities for young Democrats in this presidential election?
The number one that I'm hearing very often is kind of one I feel like we always hear about, and that's student debt relief. A lot of kids, it's crazy when you're coming across more and more of them who are leaving these schools. I mean, I'm talking about big time schools, well educated, ready to go in the workforce, and in like 60, 70, $80,000 in debt. And you already know coming into entry level positions, which most of them are just because they are getting these degrees, that experience still is putting them at the low end of the totem pole at the job. So now they're chipping away at bills, all the living expenses on top of the debt that they have to pay back to the school. So it kind of, they're starting 10 steps back before they can really kick off. And then all that then trickles into, housing costs, cost of living, all those things. But I think primarily it's going to be debt relief for student debt relief.
And I think as I was listening to you, Davante, that it's like the trickle down effect with
Yes.
student debt. You
100%.
get out of school, you graduate, like they say you're supposed to go to college, get your college degree. You graduate with all of this debt, and then that debt trickles down to everything else. Home ownership, as you mentioned. If you have children or want to have a family, it trickles down into that as well. So not only does it put the person behind that has the student debt, but it puts behind family members directly and indirectly as well.
Oh, 100%. That's a perfect way to put it. We know one person loves the trickle down method, but that's the opposite end of the trickle down method.
Yes,
exactly that. I mean, all of it.
So the presidential candidates that we have before us is former President Donald Trump and current Vice President Kamala Harris. How do you think they are addressing the issues of the young people today?
On one side, when you're talking about a Donald Trump, I don't think he addresses any issues. He doesn't come with any platform at all. It's a lot of runaround. And I took a cohort with Men for Choice, actually, and they teach us what exactly that is, the framing and how you will address, you ask me a question, I repeat the question back to you, and then start a tangent on something totally different. So you think I'm answering the question, but I'm really not. So no plan in that point. And I think VP Harris I think she has a lot of great plans. I think it's right now dealing with that struggle of people just kind of finding out about her, or even if we knew she was the vice president, not really understanding who she is fully and like her track record and all that. So I think now her having to put all her good ideas, all her great plans, mixing that in with, this is also my track record, this is why I can get this done. And I think my favorite plan of hers is when she did I think it was like a 7-city tour or something, like a little small tour. And she stopped here in Atlanta first, talking about small businesses and infrastructure. And the key thing that she said that I feel like is going to reach the young people is when she was talking about student debt relief, and not just student debt relief if you graduated college, because she made a good point that some people started college, they're getting into the debt, and because of the cost, then ended up having to drop out, but they're still stuck with the debt. So I think VP Harris is hitting it perfectly with young people. I think Donald Trump is doing a lot of mainstream youthful podcast, but he's not talking about anything.
Okay, what do you think are the presidential candidates, again, with Trump and Harris, their platforms regarding racial justice and equality?
Again, starting with former president and convicted felon Donald Trump, he will play this game or say the things about kind of like acting like race isn't a factor or race doesn't exist, but then he'll double back and talk about how much he's liked amongst the blacks, how much he's liked against the Hispanics, and then we'll throw out random conspiracy theories about people's pets going missing. I think that is a direct implication of what he thinks racially, and how he is, and then just his past with his father. Not allowing Black people to rent their complexes and rent on their properties. And then with VP Harris, I feel like she's on the defensive when it comes to she's dealing with it herself as far as having to battle the race issue, because now it's now being thrown her way from former convicted felon or former president convicted felon Donald Trump that she just turned Black. When it's one of those situations where a lot of other cultures can be, I don't know, Italian and German and still dabble in both those cultures. So I feel like she's on the defensive when it comes to those things. So I feel like she understands those things a lot more. And I just trust her direction and experience when it comes to dealing with racial injustice compared to somebody who's lived a very privileged lifestyle their entire life.
Let's double back on a couple of things that you said in that answer, Davante. So one, you were talking about the animals, and that was something that former President Donald Trump stated in the recent, maybe probably a week and a half ago, presidential debate with Vice President Kamala Harris, where he was saying that people and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Springfield, Ohio was reporting that their pets were going missing, and immigrants there, I believe it's Haitian immigrants there, are eating the pets and things like that. So just kind of expound on that a little bit.
It's just wow, like where is this coming from? And then when they fact check it right after and they're like, none of this is true. Or how I guess his vice presidential running mate, JD Vance, is saying like, oh, my office is getting calls about these things happening. And people are like, we get calls about all type of stuff that isn't true. I think that is another way of fear mongering. His target base is a certain base that is very racist, whether they try to disguise it as something else. So by him targeting a group of people and then targeting what we as majority of Americans, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, our pets, people are close. So I think he took two things that are playing on a specific basis emotions and then just combined it together. Where he got it from, I have no idea. Like literally no idea. It just came out of left field. To where we were at the debate watch party and just like, what is he talking about? Like, never heard that.
Right. And I know during the debate, the moderator stated that they had spoken with the city manager and those things were not happening. So, as you were speaking about the fact check, they fact checked him during that while he was saying that.
Yeah. And I think it was, I don't know if this is accurate as far as the title, but the city manager or the mayor did an interview on CNN Thursday, and he was talking about basically, that's not true, never heard of that. That literally just came out of left field. But then all the problems that it's now caused for them because of what he said on a national stage. I think, the death threats, the threats to his family now, and all this off of a straight lie. And that came from either the city manager or the mayor. I don't know how their system is, but it was one of those. Okay. His title is one of those.
Right. Davante, do you think the presidential candidates, each one of them, are addressing the economy in an appropriate way for young voters?
One side, no, and I love starting with the most infamous one, as far as Donald Trump. No, because it is all his like economic beliefs or economic plans, if you would call it that, talking about just really tax cuts for rich billionaires. And then also, he keeps using the tariff situation. And we were having a conversation again at the watch party. He's, I'm going to increase tariffs on, China and all this stuff. And they're going to be paying tariffs, not realizing tariffs hurt the country, implementing the tariffs. So if we're implementing the tariffs, that comes out of our taxpayers' dollars. So that's not China paying tariffs. We pay on tariffs. So that's just like one of those things where, he's just saying a lot of buzzwords. And then back to VP Harris, I think if people really go pay attention to that 7-city tour she did, she laid out a whole economic plan of what she plans on doing with small businesses, the credit she wants to get off to a lot of small businesses, and how many small businesses she wants to start in her term. I'm talking to a couple people who've had business ideas, and I'm like, hey, I think a Harris administration would be a great administration to start your small business on. So that's my perspective on it.
Davante, as the president of the Young Democrats of Georgia, how do you get other young people involved in the democratic political process?
What I'm starting to see is it's not as hard as people think, because vast majority of young people are already interested. You just now have to connect what they want to a candidate, and specifically a lot of what young people want connects to VP Harris. So we were doing a tabling event yesterday, couple what I would consider young people coming by the table, and we do young between the ages of 14 and 40. That's what we consider a young Democrat. And they're there and they're just like, oh, I don't know how to get involved. Because a lot of people preach to them that they need to get involved without giving them like, hey, you should join the Young Democrats, probably you should join this organization. So I'm starting to see, once people are aware, especially of our organization, which we do have to do a lot better of a job of getting out there, which I feel like we are doing, more people get in the fold. And fortunately and unfortunately, it's on both sides. So if you have a young Republican, if the young Republicans are reaching out to them, connecting their issues to their platform, they're gravitating, get involved with them, and vice versa with us.
How is social media helping or hurting with voter turnout?
Social media helps because you're able to spread it so fast, especially as like we have a very, very bright star on our side right now, which I'm glad he's on our side, Parker Short. Somebody like that whose platform literally blew up overnight, his messaging now spreading to so many other people. Like he's even gotten an email about somebody being like, my son saw you on Twitter or something like that, and is now like trying to get involved, wants to get involved. So that's a way it's helpful, by using other people's platforms, collaboration posts, all this stuff to spread the message. But the downside is a lot of people only get their information or rely on their information that they're receiving from social media, and not doing fact checks behind things. And there's a lot of people just throwing stuff out of there. Like conspiracy theories is the worst part, because the thing about a conspiracy theory is it's entertaining. It's meant to be entertaining, and it's meant to be a rabbit hole that you never figure out. That's how you stay involved with the conspiracy. So when people are seeing that on Facebook and getting all their information from Facebook and hear about animals going missing, and they just see a bunch of other people looking at it and saying it, they're going to believe the same thing. So It's a benefit, but it also, it kind of hurts sometimes.
Right. And with social media, and we have these 24-hour news platforms, I always encourage people to be educated voters. You read something on Facebook, Do your own fact checking. You see something on
Hmm.
TikTok or IG, do your own fact checking before you run off with this is the gospel truth.
Yeah, because that's how it becomes more dangerous. Because now we all play the game telephone. You heard or saw something, and we know for a fact we don't always relate information exactly how we firsthand heard it. And once it goes to this person, to this person, to this person, now makes its way to California, now all the way across back to New York. It's then took 11,000 different turns. So that information, misinformation and disinformation is hard. And people do have to realize like you got to go do your own research. And it's not when you hear the word research and think it's so deep, it's like quick Google search. Sometimes you'll be able to find out the information like that.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. What issues or issue singular do you think would help sway undecided voters, undecided youth voters?
A detailed, and this is just being honest, a detailed plan about Gaza that is, and that's just swing voters. Because I had this conversation with a neighbor of mine, and he was saying like, people are emotionally voting and stuff like that. I'm like, swing voters are emotional voters. That's why they're called swing voters. A lot of them care about what's going on in Gaza, and then the ones that not necessarily don't care, but their focus may be like, how am I gonna get a job where I'm from when I live in rural Georgia somewhere, and
Mhm.
we don't have a lot of infrastructure or money coming our way, which the Biden Harris administration pumped in millions of dollars into Savannah and rural parts of Georgia. But I think the Gaza situation is what's going to get a lot of those, especially the ones that consider themselves communists.
Right, right. Let's talk about the presidential debate. Like I stated earlier in the podcast, it's been about a week, a little bit over a week since
Mhm.
we had the presidential debate between former President Donald Trump and current Vice President Kamala Harris. What was your overall impression about the debate?
She is definitely an attorney. One, being married to an attorney and surrounded by attorneys, you could just tell the prep work was there. The prep work was there. She was prepared. I wouldn't be surprised if they did a bunch of deep dives of like all of Trump's speeches, rallies, debates back in the past, and you could just tell she was just prepared. I think she did a great job of. I know you've probably heard a lot of people say she was a masterful baiter, because I think that's what was lacking in that first debate. Not only for what Joe Biden kind of had on his end, and was kind of doing to himself, but the fact that Trump was calm. We don't ever see Trump calm. We don't ever see him sound like he's putting things together. And the fact that he was so calm and relaxed and not getting out of reach and just getting hostile, it made him look sharper, even though he was still saying nonsense. This go around, she got under his skin. You could just tell it. I mean, like from his face, he was getting red. He was getting mad. I was like, I won't be surprised if a racial slur come out his mouth, because she was just doing a good job of attacking his insecurities, crowd sizes, lack of certain things. You were fired by 80 million people. A lot of things that mess with his ego, and he couldn't control himself. He couldn't. So I think she did great.
Now, you pointed out a few things that were really highlights during the debate for a lot of people. What were some other moments during the debate that really stood out to you?
Um, I think again, like his reaction to things, you could just tell he was like off. He was thrown off. He was thrown off. She was in his mind at certain points. I could definitely tell. Um, I think I also, and this is just to give a little critique and be a little neutral, I guess. Um, I think in certain parts she could have just like drove in harder on her plans, especially like on her closing. I think as she was closing, I would have just strictly fired off on straight agenda items, plans, what she plans on doing, and kind of not touching him more so, because he was shooting himself in the foot at that point. Like it's kind of like a Kendrick Lamar and Drake. Like he's had enough. Like
Yeah.
so those are kind of some of the biggest highlights. But then also she was prepared. She was prepared, and I know what prepared looks like. She was prepared. Even when she like walked up and shook his hand, I like love body language, and I just love like chess in a way, and it was like beautiful. Like I'm gonna force you to come shake my hand, but I'm gonna come in your space. I'm gonna come in your bubble, make you look me in my face, shake my hand, and then walk back. Something like that was just little things. I was like, she ready. She's ready.
A lot of the pundits after the debate, and they're still talking about it now, stated that current Vice President Kamala Harris pulled a Donald Trump in how she was able to agitate him, as you spoke about earlier, how she was able to, for lack of a better word, like pick at him constantly throughout the debate. What do you think about that? About her doing a Donald Trump to Donald Trump?
Loved it. It's like I really feel like they studied that last debate and was like, he was too calm. He looked like he was just too, we got to get him rattled, because we know when we get Donald Trump rattled, he goes off the rails. He says all different type of crazy stuff, and he'll get off of his substance of things that his base wants to hear or swing voters might want to hear. It gets him off from speaking about his platform, because literally the entire debate after that, he was on her. He was on her. He was on Joe Biden. And then she just hit a beautiful flip when he kept talking about Joe Biden, and she was like, "You're running against me, not Joe Biden." I was like, like, yeah, like you upset because you thought you had it, you didn't. Your crowd sizes. We know he supposedly had a bigger crowd size than Martin Luther King. Wild.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that was very tactical, very tactical.
And one of the things that you alluded to that former President Donald Trump kept talking about was how the Democratic Party requested that current President Joe Biden not run for reelection. And now we have Vice President Kamala Harris running for election with months leading up to the election. Do you think that hurt the Democratic Party, having the Nancy Pelosi's, the President Barack Obama's, the higher ups requesting that President Joe Biden not run for reelection so late in the presidential candidate? Do you think that that hurt the Democratic Party?
No, I think it helped us. I think the donations right after will show you that too. Because right now, the MAGA Republican Party, or MAGA, they are very, it's like a dictatorship over there. It's Donald Trump. It's Donald Trump. You don't even hear about the Republican Party, really. We don't, we say GOP sometimes, but it's really like Donald Trump. Everything with that party is Donald Trump. I think it showed people that we're bigger than one person. Like no one person is bigger than the party. So if the party feels like this person isn't going to get the job done or get us across the finish line, then we have no problem with something that we love you, we respect you. You still Joe Biden. You did a great job. You stepped in the, you took the bullet and beat Donald Trump the first go around. You did a great job. But now, it's time for us to kind of shift direction. So I think it showed people more like, yeah, we're the Democratic Party. We're not Joe Biden.
Oh, that was excellent. That was an excellent answer. Do you think that presidential debates, vice presidential debates, are they still needed? Do they affect a person's vote in one way or another?
I think now more than ever. Now, remind you, I've only been alive to see. Like, I barely caught Bush's first election. Like, I remember vividly the election, but I don't remember like the campaign, but caring about the vice president. And then after that, again, Barack Obama was focused solely on Obama, didn't really focus on the vice president.
Okay.
But now that we're having, after Hillary Clinton ran and you have Joe Biden stepping in, it's like a vice president now running for president, winning the presidency, Kamala Harris taking over now, it makes us zero in and be like, the vice president is actually like a key player in here, because people forget, if something happens to the president, or the president falls into a coma, or the president dies, that is now the president. And I think more people are realizing that now with the events that have happened. So now we zero in on that, because we're like, we got, Donald Trump, who, he's not a spring chicken anymore. He's he's up there. Mm-hmm. So JD Vance could possibly become our president. So I think vice presidential debates right now are definitely needed. People are paying attention.
Right. Do you think Kamala Harris did a great job, or maybe you don't think she did, addressing young voters and their issues during this presidential debate?
I think she did a decent job. I think she could have done a little bit more, but then again, too, it's only a 2-hour debate. It's easy for me to, what do they call it? Monday morning quarterback the situation. Yes. Now that we're not in it. But, I've had debates even to win my election as the president of the Young Dems. There's so many things within our debate I wanted to get across, or I would have focused in on. But like in the moment, you know what I mean? You're in the middle of a battle. Your brain is going, you're going off of how you feel in that moment. So could she have done and said a lot more about the youth? Yeah, but then also too, like, it's easy for me to judge her winding back the film and being president of the Young Democrats of Georgia. Like, I'm nobody. So, of course I could have felt like she done more, but also too, like, I don't know what that pressure is like.
Well, Davante, we feel like you are somebody. We feel like you are somebody, and don't you be talking about our guests like that.
No, I'm sorry.
Do not talk about our guests like that.
I thank you. You're right.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm somebody.
Yes, you are. So, as president of the Young Democrats of Georgia, how do you think we can get more people involved in local politics? I understand that we are in a presidential election year, and so it's always bigger. Like the enthusiasm, the engagement, even voter turnout is always so much bigger during presidential elections. But local elections that are affecting you and me personally way more than the presidential election. How do we get more people engaged, excited about local elections?
If you're a Democrat and want more Young Dems and Dems in general, you got to fund the Young Democrats. You have to. When I tell you, we have literally, I'm looking at the email in front of me, like there's at least 37 event ideas that we want to do, we know we could do, but the main question in every email here is, what do we need to do to raise the money? Like, how do we fund it? How do we fund it? How do we fund it? And when people talk about how do we get the youth involved, we know how to get the youth involved. Politics is money. The world is money. The world operates off money, because in order for us to do outreach, that may take us having to go buy $100 worth of flyers. Then, people only want to show up when there's food involved, or when people show up, you got to feed them. All of that takes money. We know what to do. We have the plan. We need the finances to do it. And then a less financial part with it is just outreach. I'm going to skip all that. The biggest thing is finances. We got the plans. We have the people. We have qualified people across the state. We got Young Dems in rural Georgia ready to get active. What do they ask for? Hey, this is what we want to do. This is the event ideas we have. These are the itemized receipts that we need. We need funding.
What are some of those strategies that you guys are discussing and emailing about to get the youth more involved?
So we love to do a good, we call them like a mixed banking. So we do a mixer, like a 2-hour mixer, where the first hour we'll do for those Young Dems of legal age, a happy hour, free food, all that, mix and mingle, network with each other, and then that next hour we're straight text banking, or for our like younger Dems who are involved with us, where we won't have those libations involved. Um, just simple gatherings and getting food involved. I think people overcomplicate grassroots campaigning. It's really being out and involved with people. And a lot of that strategy and plans we have right now is we have to be as visible as possible, and we have to market the name, we have to market the mission, we have to market our agenda so people start getting in the mix of it. Um, Data plays a key part in it in order for you to do these things, like who are we trying to target? What demographic of people do we need to show up? All of that is important, but it's as simple as like getting outside, doing an event, um, tabling at a festival like we did yesterday, where hundreds of people are having to walk past you. I'm a big believer in the subconscious mind. So even if someone's not stopping at their table, their eye is catching something, and their brain is now thinking about it in the subconscious. So a lot of our GOTV right now is being outside, what we like to call it. Got to be outside.
Yes, yes. Why do you think it's so important for the youth to be involved in politics? Because a lot of them feel like, that doesn't pertain to me. Like, that's my mom,
Mm-hmm.
that's my dad, that's, like the older people, they should care about politics. I don't need to care about politics.
The straight blunt way to put it is a lot of older people aren't going to be here to see the policies that are being implemented today. And a lot of them would tell you that. Like a lot of our older mentors or like older Dems that are like in their late 70s, early 80s, they're like, we've lived our lives. We've lived the policies that we're going to see and all that. We've lived it. Everything that's going to happen now that is going to take effect in 4, 5, 6, 10 years, that's not really going to affect us that much. Now, I still say the policies that are implemented now do affect those people, but what I'm saying is like, we're the ones that have to really live through all of this. So when they take away reproductive rights, a young lady that's 14, 15, 16 years old right now, if these bans are to go into place, like she still has to go live through her 20s, her 30s, her 40s. I call the 50s the new prime. 60s is still very youthful. Like you have to live through those. So young people have to realize like you are going to be affected by the things going into place right now. What I love to lead on is I know all the work that we're doing right now and all the things that I'm specifically fighting for and fighting for with other people, but we're not going to see it. I'm cool with that. I understand that. Just like the people who are dying during the civil rights movement and dying for the right to vote we're probably going to die and not see this ever come into effect. Martin Luther King probably understood I'm probably not going to be here to see the change that I'm implementing right now, but it's going to help the people behind us. So I think young people have to realize like right now, we are the people behind them.
Let's talk a little bit and then we'll get back to the young voters and their inclusion in the political process. But your shirt says reproductive freedom for all. And then you mentioned about abortion and a woman's right to choose is such a huge topic right now in this presidential election. As a male, what are your thoughts about a woman's right to choose, reproductive freedom? I know during the debate, President Donald Trump, or former President Donald Trump, stated that he ended Roe v. Wade because that's what people wanted. They wanted it within the hands of the states.
Mm-hmm.
Current Vice President Kamala Harris said that's not true, that it should be a federal policy and that she will reinstate Roe versus Wade, as a federal policy if she is elected. What do you think about this?
He's totally wrong. Because I'm doing this interview in a partisan policy or partisan hat right now. I'll make it clear. I volunteer with Reproductive Freedom for All. I'm not employed by Reproductive Freedom for All, but my day job is a part of a reproductive justice organization. And you will see it is totally popular opinion for people to believe that women have the right to choose. Um, Data shows you that. That's why he's kind of starting to backpedal on a lot of that, or he gets uncomfortable when abortion comes up because he knows there's a lot of suburban white women that don't want to be told what to do with their bodies. They might go along with all the other stuff. They might believe in mass incarceration. They might believe in, Blue Lives Matter, but they also believe you shouldn't tell them what they want to do with their body. So that backpedals. And then as a man, I love getting involved with Men for Choice. It is important, and they teach us to be allies in the fight for reproductive justice because we're just as affected as these bans as women are, or as maternal mortality increases and reproductive health is dwindling the way it is, who is more than likely going to be left with, everything that happens if a woman is to die during childbirth. So Men for Choice is the biggest organization for men right now that I personally believe, and probably statistically can prove, that is getting men involved and becoming aware. Like, we need to express our voices because we understand the minority voice on pro-choice or pro-life is smaller. It's just louder than ours. So it makes people think abortion isn't as, agreed upon, because the majority voice that agree with it, especially specifically as men, aren't vocal about it. So we just got to get more vocal about it. Shout out Men for Choice.
It's just like people say in the argument. Whenever you're in an argument with someone and the other person gets louder because they're losing the argument, like, just because you're louder does not mean you are correct in this situation or in the argument.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
It's the same thing.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's one or two more questions about getting the youth involved. What do you think are some challenges that are keeping young voters from getting involved in the political process?
I think I will speak from a minority point of view. I think we're specifically as minorities and like the Black youth, we're disconnected from the civil rights movement. Somebody brought it up in a panel discussion we did on Saturday, and I was like, dang, I never thought of it like this. A lot of these kids grew up seeing a Black president. A lot of these kids grew up with seeing Black elected officials. So in their mind, race isn't a factor to swing them like we should vote for this person because they're Black. They don't really care about that because they're like, we grew up with Obama. You know what I mean? That's all we kind of know. That's normalized to us compared to a lot of people who were fighting for us to get in these positions, understand the importance of voting, understand what the power of your vote does. A lot of the youth, and I'll bring it back to us youth generally, don't understand our voice matters, our vote counts, and Donald Trump and the right-wing extremists are doing a great job of putting doubt in our election process. So once you're able to do that, already playing on the fact that these people don't show out to vote because they don't believe in the process, and you just spit in this narrative that, yeah, it doesn't matter, that who's going to win is already determined. They already determined that. That's the biggest hurdle to get over.
As the president of the Young Democrats of Georgia, Davante, what are your hopes for the future of the Democratic Party?
My hopes for the future of the Democratic Party is to definitely get more youth in leadership. You need more youth in leadership, and that's not excluding our older, wiser elders. I think we're just now the foot soldiers who need to be mentored to and given the wisdom to. So I hope the Democratic Party in the future, and I believe we are, is doing a lot better of a job, molding us in these stages now. So when you're in your early 20s, you're getting mentored by these great leaders. So that way they know, hey, when you're about like 30, you might be ready. You know what I mean? You'll probably be more than likely ready to go take over this office, run for this office. When you're 35, 40, you'll probably be ready to be a governor. I think it's that part right now, just creating a good succession plan.
Okay. One more question, and then we'll get into how you got so heavily involved in politics. What is your thought behind term limits? Do you feel term limits dissuade the youth from running for elections? Or the lack of, excuse me, the lack of term limits in several political offices. Do you think that the lack of term limits dissuade the youth from running for office?
Yes. There's actually data out there to prove it. So like that's one, my opinion, but then two, show I think it's like 70% of youth agree with term limits. And I think they agree with term limits, and I'll put it more on my lens and my perspective of it is I don't think it should take you 30, 40 years to sit in one seat to get the job done or to get the work done. Um, if it kind of is taking you that long, maybe you should maybe move out the way or maybe go do something different. And then also too, I think that then forces people to do work because they know like I'm not here that long. I only can sit here X amount of time. Like I gotta put, make my blueprint right now. And then two, when you're going against like what people call the old guard, who's been in these seats for some time. They know everybody in the community. They know the people who's running the community now. They knew their granddads, grandma. Like, there's a lot of money involved in that. It's hard to take down an old guard. And I think that's what people see. And you'll hear that a lot when people want to run for office, specifically young people. They're like, I'm just not going to be able to beat them. Like I don't have the resources, I don't have the network, I don't have the money like they do to compete. So yeah, I believe in time limits. I do.
So, Davante, you are obviously young and you are very educated, very knowledgeable, very well versed in politics. When did you first become involved in the political process?
Yes, I would like to say I'm decently knowledgeable.
Okay.
But so it kind of really started back as a kid because again, when I started really like become like puberty and all that was around that Obama time. And my dad used to talk to us about politics all the time. Like we would have conversations starting on Saturday morning from like 8 in the morning to like 4 in the afternoon, sitting at that one dining room, just talking politics, like to the point where at some point I'd be like, bro, I'm tired of this. Like, I'm ready to go do something. And then they would always have us around while he was having these conversations with people. So I wasn't physically involved yet. I scraped the surface a little bit in high school because we had a Young Democrats chapter. And I was like, oh, like I identify as a Democrat. I'm young. I'll join the club. But I just wasn't really involved. And then after an experience that I witnessed with somebody being turned away from a $30 screening at a clinic, because at the time I was young, had no job that really was providing health insurance for real. So you have to go to these little clinics where you pay like $30, $40, get your screenings or whatever. Uh, Doing well enough where I could afford it. But this older guy, I guess he couldn't at all. So I like caught wind of it. You can not ear hustling, but you just, when people are talking, you just hear it.
Yes.
He was like, I don't have it. And the lady basically was like, all right, like next. And like the way he walked away, it just, I don't know. I didn't think it would like mess with me the way it did, but I think it was that simple fact. I'm like, dang, like $30. I don't know what he needed. I don't know what he's here for, but for some reason, he's here bad enough to where he couldn't afford the $30 screening, and he looks like, what am I about to do? And from there, I was like, okay, I think I want to like work on like changing the healthcare system. At the time, I hated politics around that time because I started to fall into that like belief that your vote doesn't matter. After I casted my vote for Hillary Clinton and she lost, and I'm like, there's no way America chose this man. Like, this has to be rigged. But at that point, I was like, you got to get involved. You got to get off the sidelines. Tweeting on Twitter and writing on Facebook and just talking amongst friends doesn't really get the job done. And then it just started to snowball.
Okay. What would be your advice for those people that are tweeting on Twitter or X, as it's called, talking on Facebook or having these conversations at home? What would be your advice to get them involved?
Pick your issue and go find and work on that issue. I think sometimes there's so much, especially with the Democratic Party, we cover a lot of social issues, as we should, because that's how everyone should care about all social issues. But I think if everybody just started to zero in on what specific issues they cared about and went to work on those issues and put all their energy into fighting against those issues, it would then lighten the load for everybody. So if you are, say, what I consider a conservative Democrat, where you're not anti-LGBTQ, but that's not your top 3 priorities, because you don't see that affecting your real life. So your other priorities are like getting rid of food deserts or mass incarceration, prison reform. I say go zero in on those issues and then let somebody who is like, you know what, the LGBTQ community does deserve their rights. That is what I care about. You zero in on that, because if you're focusing on these issues and building them up, I'm focusing on these issues and building them up, and we still agree that our issues matter, and we're not fighting against each other, trying to put down our issues, it all comes up. So just zero in on what you care about. Like, just because you join the Young Democrats doesn't mean you have to. I mean, we suggest and pray you be honest that, like, yeah, I agree with the Democratic Party's platform that everybody deserves equal rights. But I want to focus on prison reform. I want to focus on gay rights. I want to focus on reproductive rights. Like, just pick your lane and go to your lane.
Okay. Who was your biggest political inspiration and why? Would you say it was your father?
I think that definitely has to be one. But I think because he's my dad, I would say that's my inspiration, but I'm like, he's also my dad too. So like, of course, like that goes without being said. But my biggest one would have to be Fred Hampton.
Wow, I did not expect that.
I love Fred Hampton. I admire Fred Hampton. I felt like they killed him for a reason. And that's not a conspiracy. The FBI targeted, that's a whole nother story. But that's my biggest political influence. And I feel like it's helped me be successful in what I'm trying to accomplish, because I understand the fact that there's 99% fighting against the 1%. If we do all this infighting and colorism fighting and, trying to act like reproductive rights aren't as big as Black rights, or gay rights aren't as big as Black rights, like, nah, bro, we're all under one umbrella. Even poor white people. Like, yeah, you're white, but you're poor. You live in the same side of town as a poor Black person. You have the same, y'all go to the same like crappy school system, or you deal with the same like messed up water or affordable housing part. Like, we're all in this together. And I think that's what I learned from Fred Hampton and the Rainbow Coalition, just how he was able to take like Latinos and, I forgot the Young Patriots, which are like, your Confederates, what I would consider, but like helping them all realize we have one common goal. Like, them making us fight amongst each other is what's helping them win. They don't want us to get along. They don't want us to talk. Because once we realize, like, oh, you deal with that too? Like, oh, dang. So it's really them. I mean, I'm not a mathematical genius, but I think 99% is a lot more than one. So Fred Hampton.
Fred Hampton. I love it. I did not expect Fred Hampton to come out of your mouth. Okay.
Yeah, that's my next tattoo.
How do you stay not involved? How do you stay so aware and so abreast of political issues and the current events?
AJC. Uh, I think my network of people, when you kind of surrounded by I like to be surrounded by different perspectives and
Mhm.
different, even those that I don't really agree with, because it helps me at least understand.
Okay.
Because if I'm only surrounded by people who think like me, probably all the information I'm getting is one-sided. I
Mm,
believe perspective
okay.
is, like facts are facts, but I believe perception is a real reality. So I think being around a lot of different viewpoints, personalities, different information, you kind of start to gather and can make your own judgment about things. And then the older generation, older, just sitting around, when you're around a table full of old heads, just listen. You will learn so much if you just sit there and just listen. Like, yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. What challenges, if any, have you, and I'm assuming that you have at least one, what
Mhm.
challenges have you faced being so active in the Democratic political party and then eventually becoming president of the Young Democrats of Georgia?
I love to go against the grain. That's kind of how I was brought up to not go against the grain to just be natural rebellious, but what I believe is what I believe. Um, how I go about something is like how I'm going to go about it. Nothing disrespectful or anything like that, but I'm not about to. I'm not going to kiss no rings. I'm not going to. I believe we all are equal, and I think that's kind of hurt me in certain points because I look at us as equals. And of course, there's people that I'm like, oh no, like they're definitely big dog. Like
Hmm.
respect needs to be going. If Fred Hampton was still alive, I'd be like, nah, that's big dog.
Yeah.
Andrew Young, that's big dog. Like, but I think we're all equal. So in my mind, I'm like, you're no better than me. I'm no better than you. Like, why do I need to kiss your butt to get this done when I can just go find the resources to get it done? And I think that's organizing in general, like even outside of the party. I think that's like a life thing that's kind of held me back because, like, if I believe in having conversations with these people over here, but we're supposed to be these people, I want to have this conversation. I'm gonna have the conversation. So, you know, you live and you learn. You live and you learn.
Yes. How has being involved with the Young Democrats of Georgia shaped your values?
Um, I think it shaped my values in. It sounds so cliche, but like humanity, because again, as the Democratic Party, you take on all social issues, so you're exposed to all type of social issues. So like, even being honest and transparent, I didn't really understand like trans rights for a minute. I didn't disagree with it. I just didn't know about it or like was educated enough about it to where I'm like that's an issue, but like, maybe it's not that big of an issue. But then when you're like exposed to it, you're having conversations with real life, like trans people, hearing their struggles, hearing maybe how they had to grow up, and you start to like, I'm an empath. I'm like, oh, like, dang, I couldn't imagine what that would be like. So I think it's definitely shaped me to believe more in humanity and just be a lot more empathetic and sympathetic.
Okay, I have a couple more questions for you. Then I will let you go, Davante. Living in Georgia, you grew up under not literally, but Stacey Abrams campaigning to be governor of the state of Georgia, wanting to be the first Black woman to hold that office. How has she shaped your views and your thoughts in politics?
One, as an organizer, this goes back to people overcomplicate things, and they're like the Stacey Abrams magnificent plan. It was a magnificent, simple plan. Grassroots organizing, door to door, personal contact, and really taking a page out of her book. No matter what people say about her, no matter how people may feel about her, she brought money into the state. A lot of us are employed by organizations who were funded by the money that she brought into the state, by the organizations that she created, no matter what they try to say about it, your opinion about it, whatever, that is a reality. And she didn't win, but the work that she did by getting so many people registered to vote trickled down to a lot of people. A lot of people would not have their seats if it wasn't for Stacey Abrams. And then I also have to say, like, the organizers that organized with Stacey Abrams, because it wasn't solely just Stacey. Stacey is a great leader. Stacey is a great person, but we all can't do this work by ourselves. Like, I'm president of the Young Dems, but there's a bunch of chapters that make the work happen. So Stacey was the head, she was the leader, but there was a lot of organizers that helped that. And if it wasn't for them getting so many people registered, I guarantee you we wouldn't have so many blue seats.
Do you think that even though she lost the election, she ran twice for governor of Georgia, Stacey Abrams, I'm talking about, that even though she lost both of those elections, that did she win in the end?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I mean, I don't know her personally and I'm not in her life, but I say personally she won. Because we got to keep it real. We care about humanity. We care about the policies and stuff like that. But we all still want to have like successful personal lives to take care of our families. I feel like she's done a great job with that. She's built her brand. She's Stacey Abrams now. Like, you can't go anywhere without anybody in the state of Georgia knowing who Stacey Abrams is. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like she's done a great job, and I think she's bigger than Georgia. I said it. I think she's bigger than Georgia. I think she needs to run for president. I said it.
Uh-oh, you heard it here first, people. You heard it here first. Okay, my final question for you, Davante. What do you hope to achieve as the president of the Young Democrats of Georgia in the short term and in the long term?
In the short term, I want a membership, a body of active members for the Young Democrats to be 20,000. 20,000 active foot soldiers, not people that are like, I'm a Young Dem, but like, no, I am a part of the Young Democrats of Georgia, and this is the work that I do day in and day out. I want to, we're going to provide internships for people in the state house. We're going to start the state house, and then as we build relationships locally, get people there. But getting these kids who aren't going to be awarded the opportunities to intern, there's a big internship program that the state house does, but it's kind of lean to benefit Republicans, and only certain type of people qualify for those internships. At the Young Democrats, we're like, you're a Young Dem, you want to be an intern, that if people help us fundraise, paid internships for, and then what I've noticed with interning is it snowballs. You intern or work on a campaign with this one person, they win, and now you got a job because you worked on their campaign, they trust you, they know your work. So those are a couple goals. And then my long-term goal would be to make the Young Democrats of Georgia the biggest, most active, most sought after, most loved, blueprinted Young Democrats chapter in all of YDA, which is Young Democrats of America.
Oh, right.
We will do it. We will do it.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So if people want to support Young Democrats of Georgia financially, how can they do that?
Go to Young Democrats of Georgia. We are the first website that pops up. Hit the donation link, hit the Act Blue. And if you can't do it financially, send our membership form to a Young Dem, because that honestly helps us as well. Because if we're helping somebody else get involved, that then helps the organization get stronger because you then brought a new skill set in. But go to the Young Democrats of Georgia, hit the Act Blue donation link, and we greatly appreciate it.
Well, I greatly appreciate having you on my podcast, Davante.
Thank you.
You have been amazing.
This is probably definitely one of the best interviews. If questions on point, you paid attention to where you ask other. Great interview. Great
Oh
interview.
my goodness. Thank you so much. Wow. Thank
I'm
you.
glad I
I
could have snagged
appreciate
this.
that.
I'm glad I snagged this
Yes.
from Parker. I'm glad.
Me too. Me too. Me too. You are amazing. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
I appreciate you.
And thank you so much to my listeners and my viewers. You can get Davante's podcast on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. And you can find the rest of my podcast in the same location, YouTube and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.